Good evening. This right here is the U.S. southern border, and for the past year, it has just been inundated with people trying to cross illegally. In fact, every single month in the year 2021, a new record was broken in terms of both apprehensions as well as encounters between Border Patrol agents and illegal aliens who are trying to break into this country. However, what's most shocking of all is that the over 2 million illegal alien encounters in the year 2021, well, they took place during a period of time when Title 42 was in place. And in case you don't know what that is, back in March of 2020, President Trump implemented Title 42, which is the emergency health provision, and it basically closed down the border to all non-essential travel. It allowed Border Patrol agents who are right there stationed along the border to turn back and expel illegal aliens almost immediately, rather than having them come in, be placed in custody, and go through a longer deportation process. Now, there were some caveats introduced to Title 42 under Joe Biden for both unaccompanied children as well as for family units. However, the point is that even with Title 42 in place, well, we saw a record number of illegal crossings. So why is this so important? That's because 2 days ago, the Biden administration officially announced that they are lifting Title 42 altogether. And so it's that fact, along with an ant operation being conducted by the Mexican government to transport tens of thousands of Central Americans up to the border, is leading many experts to believe that we are about to experience a tidal wave of illegal crossings. And in order to make sense of what's really happening, as well as what's very likely coming down the pipe, well, we spoke with Mr. Todd Bensman, who's a senior national security fellow with the Center for Immigration Studies. Let me ask you this. Title 42, even when it was invoked back in 2020, it was always understood to be a temporary measure. I mean, it can't last forever, just like, COVID would eventually go away, and now it's becoming more and more endemic. People are recognizing that. So what is, in your opinion, the long-term solution, given that Title 42 was always a temporary measure?
Well, you're right. Title 42 is never meant to be policy. It's temporary. But by default, the Biden administration, because of all these other things that they did that enticed these millions of people to come, turned out to be the only membrane that they had, the only speed bump that they had. And so by default, it ended up being kind of like the policy. The long-term issue is, like I said, about access to the American asylum system. Title 42's greatest strength, or weakness if you're on the progressive liberal side of the line, is that it denied access to the asylum system. If I can just quickly explain, the way the asylum system is set up is, whether you're eligible or not, all you have to do is cross, say I declare asylum, and you have this off-ramp into the American interior pretty much forever. And that's the purpose for the constant campaigning against Title 42 by the migrant proponent industry, the migrant advocacy industry. They want this to be available to everybody, and that's also why there's going to be 18,000 a day, they're predicting, that are coming to finally, for the first time, get a piece of the asylum system. Donald Trump kept the asylum system, the main enticements, the narcotic in it, off limits by making people wait in Mexico instead of inside the United States. Because when you lose, win, or abandon, it doesn't matter. You're in the United States, and that's all anybody cares about. If you're stuck in Mexico when you lose and abandon, nobody came for the great Mexican dream.
What happens to people once they cross the border and they raise their hand, they say, I'm seeking asylum? I've heard a lot of reports, a lot of mixed reports saying they're given cell phones, they're flown into the interior of the country, into different cities, although nobody can track them afterwards. A lot of them are granted visas or court dates, but they either skip on the court dates or overstay their visas. Once they make it, what happens to them?
Well, a great many of them, at least 1.3 million since Inauguration Day, have resettled in the United States with these notices to report or notices to appear. It's like an honor system, which in my view is illegal. There is no authority in any law that grants DHS authority to let people just parole in to the country en masse like that. About 1.3 million by our estimation. Those people come in, they get processed through Border Patrol in a very quick manner. They're given a piece of paper, and within 48 hours, they're on a bus to Toledo or Orlando or whatever, or a night flight somewhere. There are flights going all over with children. The main thing that people need to recognize is that the Biden administration has abolished ICE in all but paper. So there's very little deportation activity happening on the interior, and everybody knows it. The whole world knows it. So if you get in, it doesn't really matter what happens, because for the next 3 years, you're in the clear. Nobody's coming after you.
Now, Todd, my next question is probably what a lot of people watching this program are wondering as well, which is when exactly... Sorry, what's this?
Roman, it's me. Of course it's secure, because we use the Sekur app, which is the sponsor of today's episode, as well as an awesome email and message service provider that actually cares about your privacy. Now listen, it's no big secret that our data is being mined and remined all the time. In fact, there was a recent study that was published in the year 2020, which found that 155 million Americans, likely including you and me, have suffered some form of data breach. And frankly, that's only what's publicly known. However, all those past problems with privacy issues and data mining, well, that can be an issue of the past, because moving forward, you can use the Sekur app, which both your messages, your emails, and your phone calls can remain private. That's because they have their servers and their data centers located in Switzerland instead of in the US or China or Russia. And why does that matter? Because Switzerland has the strictest data privacy laws in the entire world, and they are not subject to the intrusive Cloud Act. Now, what I love the most about the Sekur app is that they don't collect my data, they don't mine my data, they don't mine the data and phone numbers of my friends and family. Everything is private. And best of all, at least in my opinion, this does not work with your big tech email provider just because it is not secure. And so check it out. You can head on over to sekur.com, and if you use promo code Roman, you can get 25% off. And frankly, their rates are not even that expensive. It only starts with $5 for the messenger and $10 for the email and messenger combo. And best of all, they offer a 7-day free trial.
So when you say that the Biden administration effectively abolished ICE, so ICE still exists as an agency within the U.S. government, but what steps did they take to make it, in effect, abolished?
Well, initially they tried to do a 100-day moratorium on all deportations from the interior, because deportations were viewed as cruel. So there was a demand to just end. There's always been this pressure, just stop the deportation. That was challenged in court. They got an injunction right away. And then the next move, really very soon after inauguration, was to tinker with the internal directives of ICE as to who was off limits, what places were off limits, and what the permissions requirement are to go do operations. And those internal policy changes, for lack of a better, their internal memoranda, have ended almost all deportations of almost all people. I think you have to be a serial killer or something, or like a terrorist with a bomb like this. And then even then you have to call the headquarters in Washington and ask for permission, which requires all this paperwork to go bust somebody and arrest them. There's effectively no deportations happening, or very, very little, nominal.
Wow.
Everybody knows.
So you have this sort of two-front storm: lack of deportations, already record-setting number of apprehensions and border encounters. But you recently wrote a piece saying that very soon we might have a wave of 70,000 migrants that have been holed up in an ant operation by the Mexican authorities. Can you talk about that? Can you explain that?
And that's already happening. Essentially, there's a deal between the Biden administration, it's an under-the-table deal, but it has been reported, and the Obrador administration to have the Mexicans hold the line as much as possible on its southern border with Guatemala. In other words, make it look less terrible at our border, help us get the numbers down for optics. The polling's terrible on this. So the Mexicans responded by requiring everybody coming in to apply for some kind of Mexican residency card or asylum or, a humanitarian visa. And then it takes 3 and 4 and 5 months for it to come through. So they're stuck down there. Now, there's ways around it if you've got money, but the ones that don't have money actually are stuck. And so they build up until there's 40, 50, 60, 70,000. And then they start rioting. We've seen 3 cycles of this happen in the last 6 months. They start rioting every day, taking over government buildings, burning tires in the streets, that sort of thing. They become a domestic problem for the Mexicans. So the Mexicans have to let them go. But if they just let them go in a caravan, that's a big media spotlight thing, right? Or a Haitian camp under the bridge thing. So they do it in a way that they spread it out over 15 different Mexican cities. And they let them all go, and they direct them to go to these different cities so that nobody really notices. And it's called an ant operation because it's like little trails of ants that nobody really notices, each one carrying a bundle. Eventually all those bundles get up to the border and cross. And the last time I was in Tapachula, which is the southernmost city, in late January, they were building up again in a huge number. And so I was predicting that they would start another ant operation in a couple of months, and they did. And most of those people are now washing over the border at Yuma and Del Rio and in the RGV. Huge numbers have just overwhelmed the Border Patrol. And this is even before the Title 42 thing started. Now you have Title 42 people coming in who are just saying, I'm coming to wait for the magic day.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So both of those things are happening at the same time in Mexico, which is kind of why Abbott's doing what he's doing right now.
So speaking of Greg Abbott and the actions taken by the state of Texas, I wanted to discuss 2 of them. The first is that they've begun busing migrants from the southern border that are crossing. Now, what you just watched was about half of the interview. If you would like to watch the interview in its entirety, if you'd like to watch the other half, simply click on that link in the description box below and head on over to Epic TV, and you can watch the full thing in its entirety. Because listen, whether it's cable news, the legacy media outlets, or these giant tech companies, these giant tech platforms, well, it's not hyperbole to say that they are ripping this country apart and censoring our God-given right that's enshrined in the U.S. Constitution to be able to engage in free and honest discourse. And that is why we here at the Epoch Times, we are building a new platform, a better platform where we can have real conversations without the looming constant threat of censorship. So click on the link in the description box below, head on over to Epic TV. You can watch the rest of this interview. You can watch many, many other phenomenal interviews. You can watch many documentaries, many movies, as well as a ton of other great programs that are there. And you can know that just by subscribing to Epic TV, you are fully supporting the journalism that we do here at the Epoch Times. So head on over there, and if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. Then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.